Thank you for the opportunity to speak before the school board this evening. The vision of the Springford Area School District is to be the district that every parent would choose as their child's educational provider. The school board, district administration, teachers, and staff have worked together over the past 10 years, and the district has gained state and national recognition in academics, sports, and fine arts. Our programs for students with special needs and students who are English language learners are highly regarded in the area. As a result of these efforts and recognition, parents are choosing Springford to be their child's educational provider and are moving into the district for the opportunities our district will provide for their children. We welcome our new students and families to the district. They bring with them diverse backgrounds, experiences, and cultures that enhance the district. The Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee seeks to facilitate the district's ongoing efforts to promote an inclusive environment that celebrates this diversity, to prepare our students to become members of a global community and increase staff awareness of differences within the school community. In our presentation this evening, you will note that our focus is not on curriculum, but rather professional development, expanding opportunities for our students, recruitment and retention efforts, and digging deeper into data. We kindly ask that you hold your questions until the end of the presentation. I would now like to introduce Ms. Linda Valor, Senior High English teacher and Chair of the EDI Committee.
Good evening. Before we start with the presentation, we wanted to start by defining some terms, right? So we want to make sure that we have transparency. We want to make sure that there's a common understanding of the terms that we're using throughout this presentation. So we're going to start with the idea of inclusive excellence because we are going to be presenting the Inclusive Excellence Plan. So inclusive excellence is working with intention to foster and maintain a learning and working environment where all individuals feel a sense of belonging. So that means regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, ability, country of origin, religion, socioeconomic status, or any group with which one identifies. To be specific, here at Springford, we believe that inclusive excellence is a collaborative, continuous process bringing together students, staff, teachers, administrators, parents, and the community in the work of embedding diversity and inclusiveness throughout the district. I wanted to remind everyone, and I'm sure that there will be questions after, but if we could just keep the questions until we're completed with the entire presentation. We want to make sure that we value your time. We don't want to repeat any information. And we're hoping that some of the questions get answered as we go through each slide. So we would like to first present the Inclusive Excellence Plan. And this is from the consultant that we have, Carlos Wiley. These are his recommendations. So there are 4 major goals that he focused on based on his time here in the district and meeting with staff, meeting with students, and even meeting with some parents from the parent subcommittee. So goal 1 is to focus on student learning and social development. And before we continue, I want to just point to the bottom of the slide where there is a definition for social development, which is the gradual acquisition of certain skills, attitudes, relationships, and behavior that enable the individual to interact with others and to function as a member of society. So objective 1 is to have a better use of student data to address student learning needs, and objective 2 would be to provide opportunities for all students to engage in activities which lead to greater cultural awareness. Goal 2, from our consultant recommendation, would be to achieve a more diverse and culturally representative staff. And the objective would be then to increase recruitment strategies that attract diverse groups when hiring new staff for the district. Goal 3, based on our consultant recommendation for his Inclusive Excellence Plan for here at Springford, would be inclusive excellence training for teachers, support staff, and administrators. So there are 2 objectives up there, and again, our definition for inclusive excellence is at the bottom of the slide. So objective 1 is to offer inclusive excellence training, development, and strategies to teachers, support staff, administrators, students, and eventually the community. And objective 2 would be to offer learning strategies, opportunities for staff to achieve inclusion of learning goals. Our 4th goal, based on the consultant recommendation, is to create an open and inclusive district community that values worth of all students and staff. And again, these are kind of those terms that we tend to use, and we want to make sure that everybody understands what we're inferring from these terms. And so the inclusive community considers the full range of human diversity with respect to ability, language, culture, gender, age, and other forms of human difference. So there are 2 objectives under this goal. The first would be to engage in ongoing and continuous assessment of the district climate, culture, and community. And objective 2 would be to create an open and affirming community that is supportive, respectful, and values differing perspectives and experiences. So that was our consultant's recommendations. Now I'm going to introduce the action plans based on the consultant recommendation, and the EDI committee used the recommended goals to create an action plan specific for the Springford community. I do think it's really important at this point to make sure we all understand that when it comes to the action plan, we did not just use the consultant recommendations. We also used our own experiences, conversations that we had within committee, subcommittees, and that would also be including the parent subcommittee with that. This action plan has also been shared out with administrators and appropriate administrators at each building and grade level, as they will be playing key roles in rolling out this action plan. Okay, so action plan 1, again, goal 1 of Inclusive Excellence Plan. And it was to focus on student learning and social development. So the objective is to have better use of student data to address student learning needs. Our deliverables would be objective data to help drive decision making, and our measurables would be optional surveys, reports from Skyward, reports from Future Ready PA Index, and student reports. Okay, so here are the action steps for us to achieve or to make progress, if we want to say that, in terms of goal 1. So our action steps would be to have a deep dive into the available data. So disaggregate data by gender, race, and students with special needs. And we're looking to have pretty much a 5-year look back with that data. We'd also like to develop database to better track student discipline to include infractions and discipline incurred for the purpose of determining fairness in discipline application going forward. And data would be disaggregated by gender, race, again, and students with special needs. And then lastly, to identify and prioritize areas of need based upon data review, and to then develop further plans of action to address needs. So our action plan for goal 2, which again is to achieve a more diverse and culturally representative staff. Our main objective would be to increase recruitment strategies that would attract diverse groups when hiring new staff. And our deliverables for that would be to increase strategies to recruit and retain staff that are reflective of our student population. So our measurables would be greater recruitment of diverse applicants, recruit and hire employees who demonstrate cultural awareness during the interview process, and to improve retention of diverse employees through networking and or mentorship. And I want to point out that we have a definition for cultural awareness up there because I know many of you may be wondering what that really means. And again, we're trying to be as transparent as possible to make sure that the community, first and foremost, has a common understanding of what we're trying to work for. So for cultural awareness, we mean a person's understanding of the differences between themselves and people from other countries or other backgrounds, especially differences in attitudes and values. And again, it's the awareness that those differences exist. So this slide is to show the student staff demographic by race and ethnicity. So I'll give you a few seconds there to go ahead and look at the race and ethnicity breakdown. I'm hoping it's clear enough for everyone back there. Okay, one of the reasons that we showed that was because, again, we want to make sure that there is cultural representation, right? And cultural representation is incredibly important. Students will often feel seen and validated when they see teachers who look like them, talk like them, you know, have similarities, right? There's something there, okay, to that. And so that's why I wanted to make sure that we had the student and staff demographic up there. And again, that's only one piece of an identity, but that's something that is presentable, right, that we can see is visible. So the action steps for goal 2 of our Inclusive Excellence Plan is to expand or develop relationships with colleges and universities that have historically underrepresented populations to really create a pipeline of student teachers. The second would be to work with the Future Planning Center, which is an amazing resource at the high school, to build an internal pipeline to encourage students to enter the teaching profession. And then thirdly is to develop an employee satisfaction survey and implement support and/or professional development based upon results of that survey. We want to be more visible in schools to gather employee feedback and then to build and/or expand upon existing mentorship programs for staff. Okay, so I wanted to pause before we get into goal 3, okay, and I am just going to share an account from a current high school student. So I think that student voice is incredibly important. I'm a teacher, and so obviously that's where my heart is. And I've been with the district since 2008, okay? And, you know, in being a teacher, you get to build relationships with students. That's one of the benefits of that. It's a value of what we get to do. And over time, students get comfortable with sharing about their experiences and concerns. And so I'm just going to share one written account. This in no way represents all of the concerns that are brought. This one in particular I'm sharing out because the student specifically asked me to share it with the community and the board. Hello, I'm writing this to express my concerns about the discrimination and bullying in this school. I'm not sure who to go to with these worries anymore, and I'm sorry if this is the wrong person to direct concerns to. I will clarify. I am a white female in a straight relationship, but I have friends of many skin colors, genders, and sexualities. It would be an understatement to say that bullying is simply bad. The slanders, slurs, and general hate that I see thrown around is vile. I've had friends hurt so badly that they needed to leave class and sob in the bathroom. They don't feel safe to express themselves, and they don't even feel safe to present themselves as a gender. I barely feel safe to hang around these people as the hate is that toxic and stifling. Here's things I just experienced today. If this hurts me, could you imagine how horrendous and inhumane this must be for the targeted peers? I have heard throughout the hallways and have been called the F slur, derogatory term for general gay people, the D slur, derogatory term for lesbians, the T slur, derogatory term for transgender people, and I've seen and heard deliberate misgendering. Even if these students were not aware that these terms were extraordinarily offensive, they have been using them in a negative context. I have been barked at, whistled at, and yelled at by, once again, my very own peers. I am appalled at the teachers. I've looked teachers directly in the eyes as they witness my peers be harassed and have done nothing about it. Nothing is more disheartening than watching a teacher, a staff member, turn their back on a situation that clearly needs them and children that need help. Reaching out further for these children can be hard and fearful, as even their lives have become political matters. That brings me to today, and this will date, I'm sure when you hear what I'm going to reference, that it was during Spirit Week in October. I don't know how or why USA Day has managed to translate to Express and Fight About Political Values Day. Why did we keep this day in Spirit Week? Even when my sister was in school, it was known for being the most controversial day of the week. It no longer matters what the point of this day was. It's being used as an excuse to openly spread hate on either side of the political spectrum. We can no longer unite as a country, let alone a school. The very core of Spirit Week was to show school pride and to come together for a fun week before homecoming. The day has pitted kids against each other. I am begging for just a few central changes. Please make the consequences harder on those who bully their peers due to gender, sexuality, race, religion, political stance, etc. Please replace or alter USA Day. Maybe enforce a strict no politics rule. No political flags, hats, or shirts should be allowed. I write this all as a student who comes to this school daily. I write this as a former bully and victim. I don't know who needs to read this to make these changes happen, but please make it happen. The second thing that I wanted to share in terms of student experience is some feedback from alumni. So some members of the EDI committee were lucky and privileged enough to meet with some alumni. The graduation years were 2011 to 2021. So we had a decade there, which it spanned over in terms of experience. And I wanted to make sure that we shared out some of the things that they shared with us. I believe at the last presentation that was asked and we didn't have the information, so I wanted to make sure that, we just wanted to make sure that we addressed it. Some of the things that they shared about their experiences were jokes from students about cultural norms, so food brought for lunches, stereotypical comments, experience of some teachers turning a blind eye towards bantering when it came to racial topics. Some students felt like they could not turn to their teachers as they were not comfortable approaching teachers that, quote, would not understand their experience. And some students did feel that they had allies in their teachers that they could turn to when they needed to have someone to talk to. They had shared with us that, all areas of diversity are incredibly important, and we should be aware of all areas of diversity within our district. They thought that information should be provided to students regarding many topics, such as microaggressions. They definitely said that they would love to see staff members get training. And some of the topics that they included were awareness, sensitivity training, bias training, teaching tolerance. The takeaway from most of these individuals were that, they may not have experienced, in their words, the best experience at Spring-Ford possible. And to be honest, I don't know which one of our school experiences were the best experience possible. But they are thriving now. They have a great group of friends, they have great jobs, they know where they're at in their life, and they want to tell current students that it's going to be okay, and that, Spring-Ford did say that they were grateful for the experiences that they had at Spring-Ford with many teachers that did impact them positively. But their hearts really went out for the students here that are struggling with the same things that they struggled with maybe a decade ago. Some of the recommendations for us, just as alumni that had gone through the community and the district, some of them are still community members, some of them are in other countries and are international. They recommended a mentor program. They recommended posting about alumni of all diverse groups so that current students could see how well our Spring-Ford grads are doing. Training for all, and they meant not just teachers, but every employee within the district and also students when we're ready to do that, and high school internship programs. So those were the student voices that we wanted to make sure we shared, which kind of leads us to goal 3, which was the need for inclusive excellence training. And again, we have the inclusive excellence definition on the slide there. The objective was to offer excellence training and strategies to teachers, staff, and administrators. And again, this is our action plan, and so we wanted to, at this point, keep it to teachers, staff, and administrators. The deliverables would be professional development for all staff that fosters awareness of diverse perspectives and backgrounds, and our measurables would be to administer a benchmark survey to staff. To students also, which would be optional, prior to implementation of this professional development. And then we would re-administer the survey to staff, and again, students, optional, in spring 2023 to measure the progress. And then we would love to hold a student panel meeting. So our action steps would be the Spring-Ford leadership team and a select group of secondary teachers vetted a train-the-trainer draft presentation to be considered for future use. And again, that was a draft presentation. And the second step would be, as we did in 2021, we plan to have a student panel meeting where students will have the opportunities to ask questions of central administration during a question and answer session. Lastly is goal 4, which was to create an open and inclusive district community. So the objective was to create an opening and affirming community that is supportive, respectful, and values differing perspectives and experiences. Our deliverables would be pro-social activities, additional clubs offered to students, and mentorships. I'm not sure everyone's familiar with that term, pro-social activities, especially if you have a secondary student or maybe that's where the focus is, but At the elementary level, I think most elementary parents know what pro-social activities are, but we put it at the bottom of the slide there just to make sure everyone understands. At Springford, a pro-social activity promotes positivity, helpfulness, and is intended to promote social acceptance and friendship. At the secondary level, we tend to think of this as what we call SEL, which is social emotional learning. Our measurables would be optional student survey, gathering information about student interests for clubs in grades 5 through 12, and students serving as mentors to younger students, and alumni serving as mentors to maybe those older high school students, so at the junior and senior level. So our last action steps, because we are at goal 4, would be to evaluate and increase pro-social activities in 5th grade to build stronger sense of community. 5th grade is a really important year because students are coming from 7 elementary schools and they're coming together, and it's a really great year to build unity within the community. We would survey, again, optional, for students in grades 5 to 12 to gain insight on clubs that they would like to see added to the current offerings. We would consider expanding clubs, especially at the secondary level, that represent the needs and voice of the students. And then we would love to develop mentorship opportunities for students. So students at the high school level would be provided the opportunity to mentor students at the elementary level and middle levels. And alumni would be provided the opportunity to voluntarily mentor students at the high school level. And we would begin that process by reaching out to alumni who have already expressed interest in doing so. So currently, just so we're all kind of on the same page, we've been holding EDI committee meetings, EDI subcommittee meetings, parent subcommittee meetings, and some of the things that we've looked over is policy, right? Policy 128, and making sure that the language is correct, the purpose is correct. We are trying to be as transparent as possible with our goals. And then we also took some time to look at the action plan review, and again, we wanted to make sure that everybody understood that, you know, while the consultant did come in and give us recommendations, our action plan is also based on what we've learned from parents, what we've learned from students, our own experiences, and what we see as needs within our Springford community. So I just wanted to say thank you to the Springford Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, as well as the Parent Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee for their ongoing work. And in terms of questions, I'm sure there are some. I'm not sure that I can answer all of them, so depending on the content of the question, we will get the most qualified person to make sure that we address your questions and respond to you in an appropriate manner. Thank you.
I'll go first.
Thank you very much for doing that. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Certainly, I want to thank you for the efforts, too, because I know that that was a very clear, concise presentation, but it took a lot to get to that point, a lot of hours meeting with other people and gathering information. So I do want to thank you for that. I'd be interested in hearing some of the timelines as these things come about, the clubs, things like that. I hope that you can continue to keep us involved in all of that. I do also want to point out that so many of these things I think we've already been doing as a district, but to have that renewed focus on them is great, and especially at this time, because so many of what things that you're talking about kind of overlap with the mental health issues, that the ways that schools are advised to help with mental health in the times of COVID, such as Unity and the clubs and things like that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Jackson?
Good evening. Thank you for the effort that's been put forth with the presentation. I'm sure there are a lot of questions, and you're not going to answer them all tonight, and I'm sure other questions will not be asked tonight. I'd like to start with the foundation. Can you just touch base on the EDI committee, the EDI subcommittee, and the parent subcommittee? Just sort of give me a big picture of what their involvement was and what their involvement would be going forward.
Sure, and I can start, and then Beth, you can jump in. So our EDI committee is the overall major committee. We meet monthly. The EDI subcommittee, there are 4 subcommittees within that. We have a student subcommittee, we have a professional development subcommittee, we have a curriculum subcommittee, and we have a community subcommittee. The parent subcommittee was also formed, and they usually meet 2 times a month because they're amazing. And we work on whatever is needed at that point. So I'll give you an example. So when this action plan came up, right, and we got the recommendation and we were sort of putting things together, we wanted to make sure that everyone was on board and that every subcommittee would be able to address something within the action plan, right? Because if it can't, then we're not exactly sure what the purpose is for that. In terms of the parent subcommittees, that's our connection to the community at this point. We're hoping to maybe bridge that connection a little bit more with our community subcommittee and our parent subcommittee. But those are the voices that we don't get to hear when we're meeting as a whole group. And so they sort of stand in for us as a voice from the community.
How many parents are on the parent subcommittee, ballpark?
Sure, we have around 10 or 11 parents that currently serve on the subcommittee.
And if there was a parent in the audience that had questions, how could they go about participating or joining the parent committee, or is that door closed right now?
At this time, it's closed. We are trying to keep the committee small at this point in time until we match the parent committee up with this community subcommittee, and then hopefully make determinations on how to move forward from there. But at this point, we're trying to keep it at a smaller level.
When do you project that there will be another update to the overall program?
In terms of parent subcommittees? Is that
No,
what you're
just overall.
So one of the reasons that I'm serving as EDI chair was because our consultant had told us that it probably wasn't the best idea for an admin to be serving as a chair within the EDI committee. I think Beth's job overall responsibility-wise has a lot of EDI embedded in that. And so the idea was that an admin could then serve as an advisor on a broader scope. So even the EDI chair itself is just a one-year position, so I will be done after this school year and another member will be stepping in. I think at the end of the school year is a good time to start figuring out what do we need to add, what do we need to take away. So I would say that probably in the fall of this year we would start looking at how we want to, add onto those existing subcommittees.
And will this approach be the same for the other committees? A transition of new voices, new faces, new approach, not approach, but just new thoughts?
Yeah, so the subcommittees will stay with the members that are there. We're obviously always accepting more members into the EDI committee as a whole, and then they pick a subcommittee to serve on. The idea is that even within the co-chairs, that'll be a one-year position so that it's constantly rotating. Just in terms of perspective, I think that's important in leadership, so.
Thank you.
Any other board members have any questions?
I have just a few. So I think you had some really good concrete suggestions of how you're going to move forward and implement the action plan. A lot of it, though, and I think Dr. Wright mentioned this, that a lot of it's already happening at this point. I do get the renewed focus. I guess I'm struggling a little bit with what is really brand new, but I think some of those mentorship and internship references that you made could be additions to programming that we have in place already. What did Mr. Wiley bring to the table that you felt like you could include here? And is that something that you're going to be asking us to continue? What is your position on that? Or do we have enough information and guidance from Mr. Wiley that this is now going to take off and these action plans are going to be put into place and we're able, or you're able as a committee to kind of foster those and help them to grow? What is...
So I'll go first, and then I was going to say, in terms of action plans, I think it's really important to know that the EDI committee is really just there to offer suggestions, right? And I mean, we really don't have the authority to really do anything, right? We're kind of there to suggest, right? And to have these conversations and make suggestions. In terms of Carlos Wiley's recommendations, we took what we had from him and we created this action plan for something that's realistic at Springford. He met with us 3 times, right? once in August, I think October, and then January. And within that time, I think he was gathering information. He's not from this community, and so there's a lot to learn. I think he met with some parents, he met with students directly, he met with some teachers. In terms of where we go from here, and I understand what you're saying with things that already exist, I think the idea is to build on them more purposefully. So when you say mentorship in terms of staff, we were having a conversation about this earlier, and I said, oh, we kind of have mentorship programs for staff, but not with this angle, right? Not with the diversity angle. And in terms of student mentorship, I do think that that is something that's lacking within the student body, and that is really a piece. And I'm the teacher, right, of the group, so that's definitely a piece that I feel very strongly about, and I think, that's definitely something new. In terms of our consultant, now that we have these concrete things, right, the idea is that he's trained and he has more experience in things on how we can roll out these concrete efforts that we now have. And Beth, you can speak to that if you have anything to add.
That's good. I just wanted to see where the contribution was. I see what you're saying, and that it sounds like it helped to shape the information that you needed to gather, and then as a group you created this action plan. That I know it came up several times. What specifically is this addressing? I think that maybe the letter from your student was a tip of the iceberg, because I'm still not hearing, and I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but what the exact issue is. We certainly don't want to, have a blind eye to something that's going on. But if we're going to do all these things, we just want to know what are we addressing.
I'm going to say from a teacher standpoint, and I'm sorry, did I cut you off? Okay. I'm going to say from a teacher standpoint, and I'll be honest, I love Springford. I've been here since 2008. I have a lot of pride in the place where I work and the people that I get to work with. I do think that there needs to be a culture shift in terms of whether or not every single student is feeling safe and welcomed and valued. And one of those things, for me, is, that's why we put up the staff and student demographic. I think that's one piece of it, is that students know that there are teachers who've experienced what they've experienced, right? And I think that's something that was mentioned by the alumni, that some students did feel like they had allies, and that was very clear. And other students didn't know who to go to because they didn't know if the teacher had a similar experience to them, and I think part of that, for me, comes with training also, right? Like there are so many other pieces and conversations, and that's what we do within the EDI committee itself. So for me, I would like to see a culture shift in terms of making sure, and not that one group is valued over another. I want to be very transparent in that, in saying that. It's that all groups are accepted, right? And when we can make sure that one group has met their needs, everybody really benefits from that, right? And so I think that's the idea, to make sure that every student group has their needs met and that they have access to what is going to make them successful post-high school, right? And that's not just career-wise or education-wise, but also in life, right, in terms of identity and their own value.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I tried. I don't know if that was enough. Was that good?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I wanted to make sure. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. So.
Thank you. I do like how you continue to return to the focus on student involvement, student experience, and student voice, and that value. So thank you for that. Mrs. Deardorff?
Thank you, and I wanted to thank you all immensely for your work, too. I was wondering if you could give an example of what inclusive excellence training would entail, or is that something that would be ongoing? Just a little bit, because it's very wordy.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
to give
yeah.
a little bit more detail of what that would be hands-on.
Sure. And it's one of those buzzwords, right? And we don't really know what it means. And the problem is it is a very general idea also. In terms of inclusive excellence training for us, I think one of the things that we needed to do, and this is why we didn't come right out and say, like, we have a training set up, is because we are very much still in the process of figuring out what that looks like for our district and its employees and what's relevant for our district and its employees. I think, honestly, the alumni had some good ideas. In terms of just sensitivity training or teaching tolerance, I think that's an important angle to go with. And again, it's the acknowledgement, right? It's the acknowledgement of the differences. What does that look like? We were saying that we don't want it to be a one big sit and get 8 hours of intense training, because I don't think that's going to work. I think it's better to, we were saying probably to embed it in in-service days that already exist and opportunities that already exist. And so it's not a one and done deal. I think, like, earlier I had mentioned the idea of a culture shift, and to truly have buy-in and for people to understand, it can't just be a one-time thing. And so I don't think inclusive excellence training is something like, a really intense 8-hour boot camp on how to be culturally, aware. I think instead, it's more understanding that it should be embedded in our, everyday strategies and techniques that we're using with students and colleagues and the community.
Thank you so much. And I do like how the focus is not as specific issue-based as more of creating a community of that culture shift, of that encompasses all of these things. So I think a lot of times we look at wanting it to be very specific, like we're doing this because of X, or we're doing this because of Y, but really we're doing it because of A, B, C, D, E, so that everybody is included and valued and seen. So I appreciate that focus. And my last question, is there any current professionals, since I'm not privy to what professional development our staff are already receiving, is there anything currently going on or that has recently already occurred that you feel fits into that inclusivity excellence?
As of this year, there hasn't been anything along those lines. The in-service days have been planned out last year for this year, so we're hoping to get more information on the radar next year for next year's calendar. But as Ms. Valor was saying, what we're really hoping to do is take the professional development and break it down into very small, tangible timeframes during a staff meeting where you can implement how to deal with difficult conversations that you might need to have. Learn some techniques one day and maybe the next day then have the opportunity to practice. So more of that job-embedded PD is what we're looking to do.
Thank you. Mrs. Weingarten?
Hi there. First, thank you very much for the way this was presented. I think adding the definition shows your commitment to make sure that our community understands what these things mean and that we don't have preconceived definitions of these. So I found it to be really thoughtful and really helpful the way you presented that. It'll help us all begin to have these conversations and understand what the other person is saying. So I really appreciate that. And hearing the stories from the student, very, very impactful. And I'm sure that's going to be a message that we hear quite often, both good and bad, right? And so I'm wondering, when we talk about measuring the culture shift, do you have examples of other schools that were able to show you, even if it's a slight beginning, to say, these are the things that we've done, what does that culture shift look like? Because, there's quantitative, qualitative data, a lot of things that we could put together, but what does that look like?
For me, from what I've seen and from what I've talked to with other students, and when I say other students, I mean students from other districts, is this idea, and this is why we put in clubs, the idea of being open to clubs that are representative of student need, right? And so it's got to be diverse, right? And when we have members of those clubs, then we realize that it is representative of the student population. And so I think when a student can say, hey, this is what I would like to meet with other students about, right? This is what I feel my purpose is. This is my passion. And be able to go to a teacher or an admin and have admin or a teacher say, hey, we can make that happen for you, right? There are people here to support that initiative or whatever that may be. I think that's one of the first pieces, because the truth is we're all incredibly diverse, and I mean, none of us are going to join the same club, right? I know that for a fact. But the idea that students have choices in these clubs and know that there's at least one other person there, whether that is the staff advisor, whether that's another student, I think that's part of the climate shift, and I think that shows true acceptance, right? And so whether or not we all join the same club. I think it's the idea of offering those options.
So we'll keep track of student population, reaction, talking to them, and basically finding out how, keeping a pulse on what's working and what's not working. And the folks in charge of those clubs will be tied into a committee to talk about it? Or how do we, I guess I'm wondering how we collect that data.
Yeah, so one of those components would be the optional student surveys. And, the idea is that it's optional. And so hopefully students that are filling out the survey probably would like a certain club to be started, right? The student subcommittee usually works with certain clubs already, right? So we get a full club list at the beginning of the school year. We see what's approved. We know who the staff advisors are. And those are the kind of connections that we're trying to make. And those are one of the things that the student subcommittee does do. They check to make sure what the clubs are. When there are events, we make sure that we try to connect different staff advisors and make sure that students' needs are being met. So that is one of those things that we now definitely, after this action plan, we'll have to put on our radar to really monitor a little bit more.
So we'll see points of measurement throughout as this progresses?
Yeah, I think the idea with that is, I think we have all of our clubs published on the webpage. And if at any point, the board needs to see a list and what's new, and, that's definitely doable. The other thing with club formation is that they have to be approved, and there has to be a budget for that, right? So not every club can be approved. I do want to point out, though, that most clubs, at least at the high school level, from my understanding, because I run one official club and one unofficial club, is that as long as admin approves, the club can still run unofficially until there's budget for it to be official. So those students' needs hopefully will still be met in that way.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mrs. Harmon?
Thank you very much for coming today and sharing these objectives, because I know that you were tasked with coming forward with something tangible, and I think that this presentation hit the mark with regards to that. My question is with regards to accountability. So I heard, or maybe I should just say, like in a lot of organizations, the goals, the objectives, the strategic vision when it comes to EDI initiative lies with administration, so that would be Ms. Lease, Mr. Rizzo. And then oftentimes there is another individual, a director of EDI or some type of chair, right? Maybe you, Ms. Valor, who is responsible for overseeing the execution of these action steps that you've outlined in the presentation. So I guess my question is, in a district as big as Springford, where we have as many buildings as we do and as spread out as we are, who ultimately has responsibility and oversight with ensuring that these action steps get executed?
So remember earlier when I talked about who is qualified to answer that? I'm going to take a step back now. Please step in on that.
Thank you so much for that question. As we stated earlier in this presentation, the EDI committee comes forward and we make the recommendations, and we hope to work in conjunction with administration to implement these action plans. So as we move forward, it would be the EDI committee in conjunction with whatever building administrator or building liaison, we would be working with those individuals to make these plans come to fruition. So long story short, it's really building administration in conjunction with EDI that will be holding one another accountable to implement. I also want you to be aware that we are also in a consortium. Montgomery County Intermediate Unit has pulled together school districts from across the county that also have EDI committees. So we are one of many across the county, and we are also learning from other school districts how to do exactly what you're talking about. So we're not reinventing a wheel, but when we have these meetings, there's only been one so far, but when we do have these meetings, I certainly have peers across the county that I can bounce ideas off of as well.
Just got a couple other questions.
Could I have a chance?
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm sorry. Mrs. Arrow? Mr. Schaefer?
When I heard the letter from the student, it was shocking to me, and maybe I'm naive, but I had no idea that things were, maybe I'm reading more into it, that are as widespread as that. And I know that as a school district, there's only so much we can do with the kids to open up their minds because they're going to have their home and community, input that might be leading them in another direction. However, two parts that really bothered me was one, that she did not know who to go to. That, to me, shouldn't, if it's their guidance counselor, I don't know, or if there's a, EDI person in each school, that obviously has to be someone that all the students trust, that they can take these concerns to, or even if there's I don't know, maybe it comes under the safe to say thing where they can do something anonymously. But the other point that really disturbed me was teachers taking no action, that clearly observed things going on and that they took no action. That, to me, is something we can address, and if you cannot change the teachers' personal biases, they can at least be trained to learn how to cover them up and at least act like they care. That really, really disturbed me. So I don't know if there's how you address that.
I think there are two things to sort of speak on that. So the first would be, a student comes into a high school and it's a big building, right? And so relationships aren't built yet with administrators, with teachers yet, with guidance counselors maybe, they're not there yet. And so the idea that a student says, I don't know who to go to, there are two things there. One, they may not be comfortable because they don't know really those relationships yet. But two, it might be that they see it as such a large problem that they're not sure how high up they need to go. And I think that's why she wrote in here, whoever needs to hear it, right? And she specifically said, share it at a board meeting, share it to the community, like people need to know. Secondly, in terms of the teachers, I will say that most student accounts that I've heard, this behavior isn't consistently happening within classrooms. They're mainly happening within the hallways. And so I think when teachers aren't stepping in, it's not from lack of care, and I can say that as a teacher, and I'll speak for my colleagues, that teachers love the students in this district. I think it might be lack of training on how to address students that they don't know, they don't have a relationship with. Did they hear it correctly, right? What is the next step? And I think those are the things, those are the tangibles that we need, right, to address something like a culture shift, so that students don't just feel safe in a classroom. When they walk out and they turn the corner, they should still feel safe and valued and affirmed. And so in terms of the teacher part, I think some of it is that. I don't think that it's lack of caring. I do think that it's not exactly knowing the right words, how to step in, and what the action plan is after.
So are there some steps being taken to address that?
I think that is, again, on the building administration level, because depending on what that looks like at each building, right, and depending on the grade level, infractions should be treated very differently at different grades, right, in terms of what's a learning experience and situation and a mistake, and what is hateful or targeting, right? And so that's sort of at the building level, but that's also something that we would like to address with training, and that's why we were saying we're sort of in the process, because there's this general training that needs to occur, and then there's Springford very specific training that needs to occur. So when we hear these things, what then is our next step? And that's more, I think, at the admin building level.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schaefer?
Just briefly, so Mrs. Lees, thank you very much. Ms. Valor, I have to say, both of my kids had you, loved you. You're a fantastic teacher, so I'm going to take that opportunity to thank you for that. So a lot of my colleagues asked questions that were close, so I don't want to have you all standing up there for any more time than you already are. But in general, balance is, I think, a key word, right? So my perception, I'm not a teacher here, but there's a lot on everyone's plate, right? So we have to sort of balance, and if we're going to inject professional learning in this direction, that's great, but then there's also other things that we're not academically looking at. So we have to sort of balance the way to do that. Again, culture does not change quickly. This culture was created over many, many, many years, right? So introducing a culture change is something that we have to understand is sort of a long walk, right? So we just have to have that. I'm not saying don't, but just recognize that this thing isn't going to, turn on a dime. And also, again, balance with regards to our professional staffing. I realize that there's a lot of resignations, and that's systemic across the country in education. So it would concern me that we would constrict and I'm not suggesting, Mrs. Lees, you have a great handle on this, but I just want to make sure we're hiring the best candidates, and certainly be respectful of the fact that, we'd like to see a little more to match our student population for sure. But I want to see the best here, period, end of story. That to me is the most important. So with that, this was an update, right? Like, just because we hadn't seen this, but there's not necessarily any action items that we're approving, we're just getting an update, correct? Okay, with that, thank you so much.
Thank you. Minister Jackson.
Hi there, a couple more questions. I keep hearing, and I'm going to follow up on Mr. Schaefer, this cultural shift. Spring Forward is student-wise, race-wise, it's 78% white students. The staff is 97% white. So when you say cultural shift, I'm trying to understand what that means in relations to this cultural shift, this training. I'm not sure what training can really take place that's effective. You're talking about speaking with someone in their 20s, 30s, or 40s. They haven't lived under a rock. So what issues that we're talking about, they see every day on the media of some sort. So I'm really struggling with, we're going to train people. What do we mean by training them? I struggle with training because if they don't have it by now, I don't know if they're going to get it. So that's one aspect I struggle with. When you say bringing alumni back, I go back to the percentages of the school district. So are we looking at bringing specific races back, or diverse of people, or what are we talking about when we're saying bringing alumni back?
Do you want me to respond now?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I think there were like three
Three.
questions or three comments. Okay. So the first being the term of cultural shift. I'm going to say Linda Valor said that term. Okay, that was me trying to explain what I envisioned in terms. I think there's sort of an issue with always considering culture within the school district to be race-related. So I wasn't saying like a cultural shift in terms of we need to get different types of students within the building. I'm talking about a learning culture, right? Like the way our community is with each other. And I'm talking about student relationships is what I'm talking about. So peer-to-peer bonding, that sort of culture. So I try to foster a culture of respect in my classroom. I try to foster a culture of learning and vulnerability in my classroom. That's what I mean by culture. So I'm sorry if it came across as race or ethnicity. That's definitely not what I intended for that. In terms of training, I think that's professional development, right? And I'm going to say I've been here since 2008, and there have been many things that I've learned along the way that I will be honest telling you that I had to reset, reevaluate, and self-reflect, okay? And I mean, I'm pretty old now, so I've gathered some things along the way that I didn't come in knowing. I taught at a city fringe school in Illinois, which was a very different demographic than the demographic here at Springford. And there were things that I needed to learn about the student population, about terminology, about language, about their life experiences, even within socioeconomic status. I don't think that teachers are too old to learn. I think that when teachers know that it's for the benefit of the student, I am pretty sure our teachers will do anything. And in terms of training and what that looks like, as Mr. Schaefer said earlier, this is the long game, right? Like this isn't going to happen overnight. And in terms of training also, we don't want it to be a one and done. These are things that should be recognized. I think recognition of differences is probably the first step. And I'll tell you, if we can get there, I think then the other things will be a little bit easier to grasp. I don't think that we're expecting teachers to come in and be completely different the day after a training. I don't think that's going to happen. In terms of training and like what that looks like, We've done professional development before when it comes to ideas of social emotional learning. Those are the kind of pieces that we're thinking. And many of us, after last year's, the beginning of last year, we have a bank of social emotional learning resources at the high school that I know many of my colleagues use on a weekly basis now. It's not something that I would have even thought to think about. I was told about it. I realized how important it was, especially at this point, with what's going on in the world. And I think most of our teachers have embedded that. And so I think when teachers are invested and they understand the value of whatever the training may be, and again, I'm not a trainer, right? And I haven't been trained to do it, so I can't really speak to what that specifically looks like. But my hope is that none of us are too old to learn. So at some point, right, if we know that it's for the students, we're going to be invested.
And two final statements, and I'm going to follow up on what Ms. Herman made reference to. I think, and the way I look at the school district, the board, the principals, to me, you have a board, you have a CEO who is Mr. Rizzo. We have principals at every school, which to me are vice presidents of a division. So from an EDI enforcement perspective or implementation, that should stay with the principal. That should be the ultimate person, male or female, that's responsible for any issue, because right now they're responsible for any issue that occurs on their watch, and this should not be any different. Thank you.
Thank
And I
you.
think we would agree with that statement.
Mrs. Zasowski had something else she wanted to ask?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the teachers for a minute that Mr. Schaefer referenced earlier. There are, I think, 22, was it you, Mr. Schaefer, or you, Mr. Jackson, that said we have a great number of retirees. And we know, Beth, I know you work so hard to get those positions filled. So my thought is, yes, we have to raise our sensitivity to this, but first and foremost, obviously, we have to always try to strive to hire the best for Springford. That's what we have now. That's what we want to keep having. But we do want this sensitivity, of awareness for sensitivity, to be part of that also. So I guess I just needed to clarify about that I was feeling about that. And when did you say that we would get another update? Did you say the fall? Or
I did not say that for the
Okay.
record. No, I think Mr. Jackson had asked when we would revisit subcommittee chairs and committee chairs and when things would move, and I said we would probably be doing that in fall of 2022.
Okay, when would there be another, and maybe Mr. Rizzo, you know that, when would there be another update to the board? Because it sounds like there are some great ideas here that hopefully are going to be put into action. We'd love to hear about, oh, sorry, go ahead, sorry. We'd love to hear about when that's going to happen.
We could have it whenever, but I think we need some time. We need some time to, so to say in 2 months, I don't think it's fair to say that right now. Saying 1 month is probably not fair. By the end of the year, sure. I think we need some time. Again, I think we have a good plan. Now, how we implement it, what the action steps are going to be, the timelines, things like that. We want to have some things concrete. What we don't want to do is come back with essentially the same presentation again, right? So I think we need a little time, but we'll expect something to you pretty soon. Well, by end of year, yeah.
I think that was good.
Mr. Rizzo, don't box yourself in. Just say when we have the information, we'll come back to the board. Don't commit to something you're not comfortable with right now.
Just telling me to keep it simple?
Yeah, keep it simple.
All right. I'm gonna keep it
And
simple.
one last thing, I keep hearing we want to hire the best. I've heard that 3 times tonight, and I'm not sure what that really means. That we're talking about EDI, and I've heard it 3 times now, that we need to hire the best students, teachers, students too. But what are we implying by saying that? Or what are we asking? Or what are we saying that we don't want to say?
I think I'm referencing that we want their first and foremost are the qualifications of the individuals, whoever they might be, to be evaluated first, and then we go from there.
Sure, so if I can just speak
But
to that.
that's our normal process, so I'm really trying
Correct,
to
and I
understand
was
that.
asking if that was going to be continuing in addition to having the lens of, or the awareness and the sensitivity piece But first and foremost, it has to be the qualifications of the individual applying for a position. I mean, that almost goes without saying.
Right, so that's why I don't understand why we're saying that now.
Well, I think it was taking that and spreading the wings to new organizations, new relationships with other colleges that may be a little further than our usual lasso.
If I could piggyback perhaps on that question and to kind of bring it back to what the community brought to us tonight, could you speak to, are we skipping over qualified candidates to fulfill this mission, or can you confidently say that we are striving to get the most qualified candidates regardless right now? Obviously, we want to have that lens, but of course, we don't want to have holes in our staffing that is struggling right now. So if you could speak to that.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. I have and I always will hire the best candidate for the position, regardless. That's my job. We've been extremely successful with our staff, as you can see, by all the accolades that this district has gotten. We hire the best teachers. We hire the teachers who work hard, who care about our students, and are passionate about our community. That will not change. What we are doing is expanding our reach. We are contacting historically Black and Hispanic colleges and universities. We are working to try to build pipelines with universities and colleges to bring in student teachers, to give them different experiences. We've contacted some schools in the city. We're placed uniquely in the county that it's a little bit difficult to get students who attend some of the schools in Philadelphia to come out to our area. But we are working, those are the pipelines we were looking to build. And quite honestly, there's a teacher shortage. I'm happy to get any qualified teachers at this point in time that we can. So we are looking to build pipelines. We're actually looking to build pipelines within our school district as it is, tapping into our own students to encourage them to become teachers as well. So to answer your question, no, I am not looking to fill a quota. I will always hire the best person for the job.
And Ms. Lees, thank you for clarifying that, because Mr. Jackson, your question was an excellent question, and it was exactly what was on my mind as well. I think there's a difference here when we see the objective when it comes to increased recruitment strategies that attract diverse groups when hiring new staff. Right? We're talking about expanding the reach and the pipeline and building our talent, right? Making sure that we're developing our talent within Spring Forward, as well as looking at organizations where maybe we can target high-performing talent from underrepresented communities. I think that's really important because there is an escalating demand, as you mentioned, on attracting and retaining diverse talent. So I'm glad that you were able to clarify that it's not about the actual interviewing process where we're playing favoritism to one versus other, but it's making sure that everyone has an opportunity to be able to be looked at for these positions.
Did you want?
Just to follow up, Spring Forward is an amazing school district. Spring Forward was on my radar for my connections in the music community, but also in the technology as Spring Forward took on hybrid learning, and I learned about the district a few different ways. There's a lot of people out there that do not know about Spring Forward and do not know about the great things Spring Forward does. We're talking about expanding that. We're talking about making Spring Forward known even more than it already is, to bring in the highest quality talent that are content experts, that are student experts, that know how to make connections and know how to teach students to make connections with each other and make meaningful connections with text and with teachers and feel connected. That's what we're bringing in. When we talk about what the best is, it's the best in their content area and the best in knowing students, all students.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this presentation. But before you step down, I also want to thank the board. I think that their questions were very, very considerate, and everyone seems to have given a lot of thought and consideration to this. Before we do, though, I want, like Edi and Allison, to have the opportunity to share any insights as students in our district, if they'd like to share anything.
Yes, we were in fact planning to. So first of all, Ali and I have some words, and thank you so much for the presentation. It was very valuable to see how much you're presenting, like the school board, what issues that the students are facing. And I think that's really valuable because in this day and age, we're seeing a lot of issues come to light. And we're thankful that you're presenting that in the form of a report. Also, in terms of your structure, I really enjoyed how you have alumni giving their expertise, as well as the current students and a parent committee. That's like 3 different levels of ways to really bring a different perspective to Springford. And especially, I would be interested to hear like the alumni lens, since they've had the opportunity to further their education, how like maybe their perspective has changed after that. So those were my thoughts, and thank you once again.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Edi said, and thank you very much for your presentation. And I can definitely say, as a Springford student, that a lot of the concerns and experiences that were reflected in that presentation, I and Edi can corroborate as students at the high school. And I really want to emphasize the fact that the students that I'm around, members of the student body, are extremely outspoken and incredibly apt to become involved, especially with issues like these. And so I think that the initiatives discussed in the presentation, like a student panel, clubs, mentorship programs, student surveys, will absolutely be taken advantage of by the students and will not go unused. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lees and Mrs. Valor, very much for your presentation tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
At the-